You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So we had new legislation that was signed into law last May here in the state of Washington, restricting what police can and can't do. Bunch of new legislation, very progressive, most progressive in the United States. That went into effect as law July 25th, so just last week. And we've got people coming out of the woodwork basically saying, hey, the new restrictions in Washington State Police may and probably will lead to a spike in crime. Now, I don't know if you've been following Seattle's crime statistics, but it's, we're not going down. We're not going in the right direction there. So now we've literally got legislation by our fearless leaders that's probably going to put the citizens of the state of Washington in further jeopardy of being victims of crime. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we jump on into today's article, if you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies, and I read the news that reasonable people want to hear. All right, let's do this. So critics of the new Dem-backed police reform bill say they're poorly written, putting cops and communities at risk. I've read through the majority of these bills, and I get confused when I read them, mainly because I don't know what some of the actual language means. But then they're just written to this level where you're like, what? What do you mean? It doesn't make a ton of sense. But then again, I'm a real estate guy and this is crime law. So as the most sweeping police reform in the nation takes effect in Washington state over a year after the death of George Floyd, law enforcement agencies outside of Seattle are arguing new restrictions set on officers when interacting with the public may further incentivize criminal activity. That is just what we need. We've already decriminalized so much of the crime that's going on. Why aren't they doing anything about that? It's not really a crime anymore. It's just a misdemeanor. It's okay. Just let them get away with that. It's fine. How well is that working out down in California with the shoplifting? How well is that working out with Proposition 47? How is that going? Yeah. You might see a video or two on the news regarding what's happening there. Criminals just walking into stores with enormous bags, filling said bags, then walking right back out, or sometimes running to their getaway cars because this is robbery. It's just straight up daylight robbery. The nearly a dozen bills passed by a legislative controlled by Democrats and signed by Democratic Governor Jay Inslee in May, took effect on July 25th and cover virtually all aspects of policing, including the background checks officers undergo before they're hired, when they are authorized to use force, and how they collect data about it, and the establishment of an entirely new state agency to review police use of deadly force. Perhaps the most concerning changes come under two new laws, House Bill 1310 and House Bill 1054, because they take away officers' ability to pursue criminals or prevent crimes from occurring. Lewis County Sheriff Robert Snaza told Fox News, under the first new law, officers now must have probable cause, a higher threshold instead of traditionally just reasonable suspicion before they can use force. Did a podcast yesterday, and I read two instances that have already happened since July 5th. Where crimes are in progress, but the police, because of the new legislation, they're like, we're not really confident in engaging with this criminal behavior going on because of this and this in the new law. We're going to step back. And so literally some of this stuff is just going to let go. And what happens? Well, the citizens are going to bear the brunt of this, and they're going to go, why is this going on? How did this happen? Well, because you voted it into law. That means, according to Snaza, if a property owner calls police to report a potential robbery taking place at their home, and deputies arrive but only witness individuals walking off the property, they no longer are able to use force to detain those individuals while they further investigate. And that's even if those people match the description of the subject. That's interesting, isn't it? Oh, how's that going to work out? Hey, those are the guys that did it. Well, we can't take them down now. We have to further investigate. You're sure those are the ones that stole from you? Yep. All right. Well, guys, we'll catch up with you soon. We got some processing to do here and got to figure it out. If you guys could just hang around, we'll need to talk with you later. How do you think that's going to go? Probably not that well. We're going to see a dramatic increase in criminal activity, Snaza said in a phone interview with Fox News. What's going to happen is, and here's the part that I found pretty entertaining. What's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of backpedaling. Really? Kind of like defund the police? Are we seeing some backpedaling now? You are seeing backpedaling on defund the police in the form of just kind of silence to the crime going on, to the crime levels going on. Huh. How did that work out, the whole defunding the police? How's that going? Crime numbers going down? They going down? No, they're not. Interesting. So these Democratic legislators are going to say that that's not what we meant. We didn't mean to take the tools away. But you did. That is backpedaling because Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs, federal police, and all these other organizations told these legislators the consequences. They told them what was going to happen, and they chose not to listen. That's where we sit. We've got legislators putting law into effect that's impacting citizens, and they're simply not listening. This is nothing new in the state of Washington, right? This is business as usual. Summer of Love. What could possibly go wrong in a policeless zone in Seattle? It's just going to be great. It's going to be a block party. It's going to be awesome until the shootings start. Furthermore, Snaza argues the law fails those suffering from mental health, drug addiction, and homelessness, and the Lewis County Sheriff's Office has moved to no longer send deputies to mental health calls. Under the new legislation, deputies will only be allowed to use force to detain an individual in mental health crisis if they pose an imminent threat to themselves or others. Imminent threat. These are people just having absolute meltdowns. And unless they pose an imminent threat, probably just going to let you go. If someone is having a mental health crisis, we may go there to their house, but if they're not breaking the law, we can't use force or basically touch them, Snaza said. We can talk to them and try to de-escalate, but if we determine there is no crime, then we call in mental health and say, hey, you guys might want to come out here and take care of this person. So the cops basically can't do anything anymore. So you're going to have, social workers, unarmed social workers are going to be called out to deal with this stuff. We'll just have to keep an eye on that and see how that goes. Uncertainty exists about how to apply the new laws, and faced with limited resources, each agency must choose whether it's worth responding to such non-criminal mental health calls when officers are now required to exhaust de-escalation tactics, which can include just leaving the scene. I read that yesterday as well. Here's de-escalation. All right, we got to de-escalate this situation, guys. Everybody get in their car and go. That's de-escalation. We're just going to let this situation fester on its own. We'll be back if you call 911 again. Crazy. That's literally an option. Just leave. Just leave. That's de-escalation. That is what is recommended. And we don't have enough cops on the streets anyway to keep folks safe here in Seattle, right? We know that. And people are just putting their heads in the sand going, this new legislation, it'll probably be okay. I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, I don't see a problem with it. Don't have enough cops in the street taking the tools away from the police officers to do their job. How could this possibly go wrong? I don't see it. Yeah, you get where I'm going with this, right? I mean, this is just ridiculous. In the past, deputies who encountered someone who appeared to be a danger to him or herself or others was acting suicidal or threatening physical violence could involuntarily take that individual in custody and bring them to an appropriate mental health provider for treatment. The bar for involuntary committal was already very high, Snaza said, but the new law raised it even higher. So you're just going to have more people on the streets that are just literally out of their minds, and the rest of the citizens are just going to have to deal with it. That's where we sit, and that sucks. What we did is we just went backwards on helping people with mental health needs, substance abuse disorders, and the homeless. Those three things go hand in hand, Snaza said. These laws have done nothing to protect those people and help those people get out of the situation they're in. All right. So here we are. how long do you think before we see story after story after story on this? Yeah, we would have gone after him. We would have helped him. But yeah, new legislation, we're a no-go. Can't do that. State Representative Jesse Johnson, the first-term federal-way Democrat who sponsored bills on police tactics and use of force, acknowledged some clarifications are necessary, but said that it's not uncommon in complex legislation. This is just how we do it. Rough draft, we put the bill into law. It actually impacts people's lives. And then we kind of figure out, based on the impact to said people's lives, how we need to rework it after it's already into law. The higher standard is designed to keep police from using force against the wrong person, something that happens too often, especially in communities of color, Johnson said. We have to create new policies because what we were doing before was not working. Well, it's still not working. It's not working at all. What we wanted to do with these bills is set an expectation that officers de-escalate and that there's less lethal enforcement of the law. A lot of the pushback we're getting is because it's a paradigm shift. All right, you've got citizens just shooting each other willy-nilly. This is coming up all the time. Regular people are starting to, and by regular people, I mean people who don't read the news a ton, are starting to get wind of, oh, yeah, ooh, that's some lawlessness going on there. Ooh, that happened there. Ooh, that shooting. What was that shooting that happened in Seattle? How many different shootings within a 36-hour period? 8 shootings? Crazy numbers like that. Seattle didn't used to have these kind of shootings. We do now. We've had, I mean, there's always consistently like one shooting or something, but now we're getting these multiple instances and people are like, what is going on? We need to stop the violence. Don't understand. Why aren't the police doing anything? Hearing a lot of that, right? Defund the police. How did that work out? The measures also restrict when officers can engage in car chases, make it easier to decertify police for bad acts, and make it easier to sue individual officers. That's the one that I am not down with. I don't care what. You can't make them personally liable. That is ridiculous. Nobody's going to want to be a cop. I mean, for doing my job, I'm going to be able to be sued personally. That's some real BS. Several law enforcement agencies in Thurston County said Monday they intend to largely stop handling community care situations, such as suicidal people, welfare checks, and drug overdoses, instead letting crisis responders, firefighters, or emergency medics handle such calls. Okay, we'll just have to see how that goes. In a lot of those situations, I mean, maybe you don't need a cop. I just feel better when there's an armed cop. I just do, in controlling the situation, handling the situation. I don't have a lot of confidence that these situations can be handled by other folks on an ongoing basis. But then again, let's just see how it goes. Snaza told Fox News the new laws, Seattle police decision earlier this year to no longer detain or arrest people or confiscate drugs, and a Washington State Supreme Court's ruling on drug possession have also negatively impacted how agencies outside the liberal hub fight addiction. Yeah, we're not fighting addiction. We are enabling addiction. All of this stuff just lets people do whatever they want to do. There's no accountability. In 85% of Washington, we still have rural communities. We still have community-based police. We still have all these great things. But the trend is, let's follow what Seattle is doing. I wouldn't recommend that. I would say hard no-go. And so would these other, the more rural communities. They are not on board with what Seattle is doing. All you have to do is drive 45 minutes from downtown Seattle, and you're in a whole nother world. I mean, it is not in support of this kind of stuff. All right, but the trend is let's follow what Seattle is doing because they said, well, we don't arrest people who are doing drugs in front of cops. Well, to me, you do that in Lewis County, you get to go to jail. And you know what you get at jail? You get to see mental health, you get to see counselors, and you get a pathway to getting transitional housing. Huh. That's interesting. That's what you're doing in Lewis County, not in Seattle. That sounds like a pathway to something positive. We can't engage with that. I mean, no, we can't have that. Meanwhile, House Bill 1054, also arguably conflicting language, it bans chokeholds, neck restraints, and no-knock warrants, and limits the use of tear gas and military equipment. All right, some of that stuff, okay. Inspired by the officers who stood by in Minneapolis as their colleague Derek Chauvin, blah, blah, blah. The measure also requires officers to intervene when a colleague engages in excessive force and report misconduct. Okay, I'm all right with that. It's when you take away the police ability to simply do their job. The restriction on military-grade weaponry would inadvertently ban some less lethal impact weapons, making the shotguns police use to fire beanbag rounds. All right. Some forces have given up on that. Others are like, nah, we still want our beanbag rounds. Johnson said the context makes clear the intent was to embrace, not ban, less lethal weapons. He expected the state attorney general to clarify that until the legislature can fix the wording next year. We're in July of 2021, so we're just going to have to do with a social experiment until next year. But in the meantime, some departments, including the Lewis County Sheriff's Office, the King County Sheriff's Office, and Spokane Police have hung up their beanbag weapons, while others, including Kent and Auburn south of Seattle, will continue using them. Now, because of those two bills, one says deescalate and the other says take away my tools, well, you can't have both. So now we're going to have to remove all of our less lethal shotguns from our vehicles, and we're encouraging all of our smaller agencies to do the same, Snaza said. They'll say, that's not the intent of the law. But the sad part is the letter of the law says you shall not use 50 caliber or larger. So if a judge looks at it, he or she will look at the letter of the law, not the intent. So that's where they need to get some readings on this stuff. And hey, what is acceptable? What is not acceptable? In the meantime, police are going to take a conservative approach because do you want to be the test guinea pig on that ruling if you're involved in an altercation and you choose the wrong weapon? Oof, no, you're going to go with what the conservative approach is. Hey, what's the worst case scenario here? All right, well, let's try to avoid that. The laws are taking effect as officers have left the state or the profession in droves. That is true. Absolutely. Seattle is down hundreds of officers following large-scale demonstrations calling to defund the police last year. There's been a huge increase in early retirements, and officers across Washington are leaving for jobs in Idaho, Montana, and elsewhere. Ohio. Police chief in Bellevue just left for Ohio. That's not Seattle, and that wasn't one of those things where we're hamstringing Bellevue police. Certainly not doing that here in Bellevue, but officers in Bellevue are being impacted by the state law as well. Basically just can't do their job. Some would say, well, these are positive changes. Okay, no, well, let's see, because I'm not really seeing the correlation there. But whatever, I'm a reasonable person looking in, and so much of this has been just craziness, just crazy talk. And if you go to the streets of downtown and look around, you've got tent city, you've got crime rings running things on the streets, you've got stolen goods bazaars on the sidewalks, you've got people randomly just running around and shooting each other, you've got shootings in homeless encampments, you've got homeless encampments next to schools, on school property, and school districts saying, we're not doing any sweeps. Just let the homeless people and their influence, just let it go. It's okay for the kids. They'll learn. Good education for them to see a homeless dude that's naked get hauled off because he's having an overdose. I mean, you're building some life skill experience there, for an 8-year-old. I mean, you need that in your life at that point, right? Oh, no. I'm a parent, a lot of parents listening. That's not the kind of influence we need. But that's kind of where we sit here in Seattle. So these new laws, I agree. I think they are not, the way the law is written is, as far as I can tell, as far as I can read it, I'd probably be doing the same thing the police departments are doing. Oh, well, this don't really know, but here's what we're doing. So they're going to back off. They're going to back off protection. That's what we've basically asked them to do. So we've got fewer cops on the streets, providing fewer services because the law tells them to. How do you think that's going to work out? I don't know. I think we are going to have some backpedaling down the road, just like we're having backpedaling right now on the defund the police. Now there's this silence, and you've still got the one side saying, you know what? We're looking at the numbers, and with these shootings going on, it's kind of apparent that we need some more officers on the street. We need to recruit some more cops. I mean, that's the conversation right now, isn't it? I mean, our mayor, Seattle Mayor, Jenny Durkan, she has always been in opposition to the crazy Seattle City Council defunding the police. They wanted to do it by 50% without really a game plan in place. Defund the police. Just defund the police. We don't care how you do it. Just defund them. Defund them without a plan in place. That to me was indicative of leadership here in Seattle. And the mayor basically said, and she knows. She knows. She understands the drill. So does even Mayor Ted down in Portland. He's like, oh, yeah. You get below a threshold of police officers, which everybody knows per FBI statistics. Hey, this is how many cops you need on the street. This is our recommended level. Both Seattle and Portland are well below that. And even the mayor here in Seattle says, we're probably going to be short like 300 officers here pretty soon. So when your mayor is saying that, and it takes a long time to get the cops through the academy, trained, into a position where they're actually contributing, that takes a while. It's not like you just, let's just sign up a couple of dozen people. We'll do one of those Wild West things where you deputize somebody and you pin the, deputy's thing on their shirt. Here you go. Here's your badge. Doesn't really work like that. And in the meantime, you've still got more officers quitting and retiring and, leaving the industry. This isn't what I really signed up for. I'm out of here. And I don't blame them for the nonsense they've been put through the last couple of years. And for years, we've been defunding the police, essentially cutting down, in some cities, cutting down the police budgets. Portland, good example of that. I talk with Portland police officers, both retired and active. Hey, the numbers, they are what they are. You don't have enough cops in the street. So what direction is that going to go for said citizens in those areas? I don't think it's going to be a positive one. Fewer cops, I think we've kind of experienced how that goes. You only cover the 911 calls that are priority 1 and priority 2. All right. Anything else? Good luck with that, fair citizens. We don't have the ability to service you. Like, what? How come? Well, you defunded us, and here we are. We've only got XYZ number of people to service said area. Not good. You're going to hear more and more and more of that, I think. Because it's just not a narrative that people want to hear. Oh, yeah, that defund the police thing. Wow. We need to reimagine and rethink that because now we need some more cops on the street. Yeah. How quick can we get more cops on the street? How fast does that go? Whew, yeah. That's kind of the narrative now, right? Who would have thought? Who would have said, I'm not really on board with this whole defund the police thing. Not really on board. And these House bills here, okay, let's see how that goes. Sending out unarmed social workers on mental calls. All right, let's see how that goes. Let's just see. Unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is you're going to have a bunch of people get hurt. It's going to be some big news stories. And then we'll need to reimagine and rethink kind of everything I just said in this article that was critical of these new laws. That's the way I see it. But other people are like, no, we need to protect people's rights. Okay, how about the citizens who are having this crime happen against them? And we're basically not doing anything. We're not doing anything. How about that? What about that? No, we don't want to focus on that. That's not what we want to focus on. That's not the angle. Don't look at that. Look over here. Look over here at this. That's the way I see it happening. All right. But that's just me. But you're listening to it on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, and I will continue following this because I don't think enough people are. And once the citizens kind of figure it out, it's going to be too late. Unfortunately, that's my opinion. I think they're figuring it out now. And they're like, ooh, yeah. Oh, this is not good. this isn't what we signed up for. Hey, you guys need to change something. Make your vote count. Maybe this is what they want. Maybe this is what the fine citizens of Seattle want. I can't imagine it is, but this is what they voted in, right? Here we are. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for being a part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Love to have you subscribe, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.